where I grow most is when I'm fearful, not knowing whether I can do it or not. And it challenges, makes me get up earlier, stay up later. I'm not talking about an unhealthy fear. I'm talking about discovery, getting in an arena that I might discover something about material, and usually it ends up I'm discovering something about myself in that whole process. So I need to constantly be moving forward and not looking back. You know, a surveyor makes a living by moving forward. He charges by going forward. But a surveyor has to first find a benchmark. He has to find the truth in which to go forward from. So it's just going from one truth to the next. What have I discovered in the process of this one sculpture that I might engage and project onto the next one? The challenge was that I know so many people will be viewing this sculpture just for a few seconds as they drive by. I'd say 95% of the viewers will be in their cars, and they will drive by and see it just very quickly. What can be projected in those 3 or 4 seconds? It's not like so many of the sculptures that I've done that have so much detail in them. It makes people pause and they look at it, and that's a whole different engagement process. With this piece, it's being, I just needed to represent an idea, a suggestion that can quickly be grasped.
I guess I first met Grainger when I was maybe a senior in high school. He was a year or two behind me at the old Edmonds High School here in Sumter. And just a really, everybody liked Grainger. He's a good guy and good athlete, modest, kind, a lot of things that go unappreciated when you're a teenager, but looking back, he was a good young man. And I didn't hear from him for years, and I started reading about him and hearing about him from local folks that had continued a relationship. And from there, he went on to become what I say is the best in the world at what he does. And we're proud of him here in Sumter. Grainger has supporters and people who care about him and would love to have him living in their community all over this country. But he chose his hometown, which I think Grainger's a lot like me. I think community pride is very, very important. I don't think if you don't like where you live and think it's worthwhile and the place is great to be, it's not going to progress. And I think Grainger gets that. He's a perfectionist, and that's good because he makes us not cut corners and makes us do it the way he wants it done, and when it's done, it's the way it should be done.
Basswood is a deciduous wood, and if we had a raw piece, we'd be able to cut through it, and you can see it has very little differentiation between the spring and the summer woods. It's an extremely stable wood. This is the concept that has been approved for Swan Lake. This is the feather. This is the pool. This is a 12-foot pool across in which this stainless steel feather will be above, and there's going to be a water feature. 1,200 gallons a minute will be shooting up. Look, hopefully, what the impression I hope to give is that this water will be looking like it is supporting the feather. The feather will be floating on this column of water. This will be cast at the foundry. All right, now the birds, the swans that are going on this feather will not be cast. They will be cut with a water jet out of 3/8 inch stainless steel. And this is how they will go together. You see the scale of what we're working on. You see this being a 6-foot figure. So you see, in looking at the scale in which we're working, this will be, let me find one. This would be one of the swans. This will be cast. This will be rolled and cut out, and then they will be welded. All right, you see these will be welded at the foundry together. That's one of 7. Another swan, and this is the model that was approved. That would be there, and this is number 3. You see what's occurring here, and all these will be assembled, and this will be shipped. This piece right here will be assembled at the foundry and shipped, welded together on a flatbed truck. The greatest dimension here is probably 10 feet, so it will fit on a flatbed. And when it arrives at Swan Lake, it will be lifted up and placed in position, just like this. Now, these are just 3 of 7. The other 4 birds are being welded together, cut out and welded together separately, because this is too big of a project to be sent. So these are being welded together, and this at the foundry, and when it arrives at Swan Lake, a crane will pick it up, pull it over, and drop it in place right here, right? And that will be the final piece. What we're trying to do is make it as smooth as possible, because if it's real smooth and comes out in the metal, you don't have to work the metal very much. And you see how this is the quill, the center of the feather, and trying to make sure it's an even, nice sweep. Because at the foundry, when they put this together, they come and weld this along right here. This was the model feather that was scanned to get to this part, all right? This would be section number 3 would be right here. This would be section number 4, all right? Here we are right here. And we do it on a curve. We made it on a curve because at the foundry, it's real easy to put this thing together. Once you line these up,
you got these points that just, if it's on a curve, it lines up so well. It's real helpful at the foundry to have, rather than just being straight across. This is the leading edge of the feather, all right? It's basically smooth. The back edge is, I will put some splitting the barbules. These are called barbules, all these, and I will split some. And I'm still trying to keep within a 1/2 inch, basically. I didn't want this to be real thick, just because the birds themselves won't be but 3/8 of an inch thick, and I didn't want this to overwhelm visually the birds. From this feather, I made a larger feather. The larger the feather, the larger it would be, the easier it is, the better scan we could get to transfer to this one. See, this going from here to this one wouldn't be as accurate, so I made it a little bit larger to scan to get to this one right here. So these are the three steps.
We've been adjusting nozzles this morning. So,
okay, all right.
We wanted you to see it. We can adjust them again. We went ahead and added those 4 nozzles on this side, so you sort of get a feel for the 4-foot column. And really what we wanted you to see was those 8 and their interaction with the bottom of the feather. Every one of them has an adjustment on it.
Oh, every nozzle?
Yes, sir.
Wow.
And every feed coming out has an adjustment on it.
So how many nozzles total you think around this piece will?
It's 8, 12, 16.
8, 12, 16, add that up.
That's 20, 36 nozzles.
36 nozzles, all right? You know, right off what I see is maybe turning these down. It seems such a big gap between there and there, you know, in the water, you see.
We can turn that down without getting in the pool.
I'm just looking at the volume. It seems something seems to be missing between here and here, is what I'm saying. You see what I'm saying? Something seems to be missing between here and there. I don't know if it's the volume needs to be increased, but overall I think it's great. I want it to look like it's supporting it, not pressuring against it.
Yeah.
I want it.
Yeah, that it was actually holding it up, and when we take the green out of it and get the stainless in it and a little better adjustment,
right,
we'll be able to have that where it looks like it is levitating on the water.
Right.
Everything's what you wanted.
Yeah, yeah. Man, this is good. I like it.
Thank you, Grainger.
Thank you, buddy.
Appreciate it.
It's
like
gonna be incredible.
I like it. Got your shim, all your shims are washing out. I'm glad we made this thing.
I am too.
There's no way we could have gotten to this point without this thing.
I appreciate you working with us on that.
Well, man, it's no option. We just, you know, if you shoot, like I was telling him earlier, if you shoot for perfection, you're going to get excellence. I depend on the Beatties tremendously to tell me what I can and can't do. But I want to challenge them. I want to challenge the foundry. If you aren't challenged, then you're on your heels and you kind of sucking a straw and you aren't excited or fearful. I want people to be somewhat scared and excited. It's right before a race. Even though you've run the 100-yard dash 100 times, you still get butterflies. So now, I think butterflies are healthy. The butterflies in making the presentation, and once the presentation is accepted and acknowledged, then fear comes in. What have I just done? Can I really do this? Along with that is excitement. And then the butterflies and fear when the piece arrives at its location.
and it's getting ready to be put in place. Uh-oh. Wonder if it's going to, it's, but at that point, there's nothing I can do. I will have had to trust the whole process at that point. So I imagine that's how it is with any endeavor. You just have to trust the process. This is the way it's going to be. This is the way I'm designing it to be permanently. So when we take this up to the foundry, first thing up at the foundry, Micah, they will disassemble each section here. When we go up next week, this will go up in parts. And then when I go back up there, maybe after the first of the year, we will put the wooden piece up on the foundry floor and drop this plumb line and get it just right. What's neat is when we measure, after all this that we've done, and this is the prototype, when we measure from here to here, it's 10 feet 10 inches in this scale. This scale is a 2 inches equal 1 foot is the scale, and this measures 10 feet 10 inches. Just because metal shrinks when it cools, just like a cake will shrink in cake. Right. There's shrinkage in the wax, then there's shrinkage in the metal. So there is shrinkage, but it shrinks proportionally. So the proportion should be the. So when we get up there, it might be 10 feet 6 inches, and that's tolerable. But what won't be tolerable is that thing still should hit here, no matter what that distance is. Right. So we have allowances. You got to have some wiggle room, but that's how you choose people to work with. Right. If you fly with crows, you'll get shot at. You just don't choose to fly with crows. See, you choose who you associate with, and that's in business or anywhere in your life.
How long have you been working with these guys again?
Probably about 10 years. They did the wing at Swan Lake. They did that one. So we're familiar, and they've done 3 of them actually. So we have a good working relationship, and they appreciate the work we put into it. So they are always eager to, because they're learning too. Because seldom do they get something in wood. I feel like I've done the best I can do at this juncture. Now it's to go up with the foundry and talk to them over, and let's go over it again, make sure we're on the same page. The city has been so easy to work with. Yeah. They just trust me, and sometimes when somebody trusts you, it's scary. I remember one time I was doing a sculpture for a man up in New York, and I showed him an idea of a reflection of 2 birds. It was a least bidder actually, looking down at his image, and it had no water surface. But it was just, I carved the image, the reflection, and the actual bird, and left the water surface out. And I explained it to him, and I sent him a sketch, and he said, "Grainger, I don't understand what you're trying to convey." But he must have been a psychiatrist or psychologist or something, because he said, "I don't understand, but I trust you." Whoa. With that, I'm doing that whole process. He was trusting me. He had enough trust in me. He was turning me loose. And that's scary. That's kind of how the city has turned me loose. They trust me. And I don't want to, I just don't want to screw up. I want them to be satisfied and happy with the result.
Because when you look at that, how high those birds are going to be up there, how big they are.
I tell you what will influence them.
What?
All the work y'all did over that WP Law with the fountain guy. He's not
Yeah, 4 inches in there.
Okay.
4 inches, you know, that was at 24 inches. It's, all that means is turning that knob just a little bit to go that much higher. I mean, being 4 more inches or 3 more inches up in it, and that was scaled for 24.
24. Okay.
So 20 inches be fine. 24 inch. I mean, if it's some mistake, if it's some, I don't want 6 inches though.
Right. No, we'll get closer then.
Pretty close.
That's what we were hoping for.
Huh?
That's what we were hoping for. So we got these guys welded up in a couple areas. We still hold that seam. A project usually starts out with the artist bringing us an original. In this case, Grainger brought us his wood he had carved up to scale with the projects, and he has separated out in sections for us so that we could make rubber molds on these individual sections. And this is something that we had met earlier on to discuss with each other where those sections should actually happen at on the wood. And then based off of that discussion is where they were able to then kind of work with their CNC machines and with Grainger on how to separate and segment the different sections for us. And then he brought the wood original to us and assembled it so we could kind of see how the whole thing flowed. Went over the important parts to him, what were the key points to the whole sculpture that we needed to make sure followed through throughout the process. And then he left it with us. Every artist, when they leave their baby, it's a challenging process to make sure they feel good about what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, the order of operations so that you keep them informed. It's a process that the artists don't, some artists will step away from, but other artists like to be a part of. Grainger likes to be a part of its pieces. So when we've worked on other projects in the past and have a real good working relationship in that regard. So we know the kind of things he wants to know, what's going on or how we're going to plan ahead for the next step of the process. So he left the piece with us, and then we were able to go ahead and start doing our rubber molds on the individual sections based off that. So then once they do the rubber, and then we do a plaster mother mold that encases it so that the forms are kept on the rubber, and then we're able to remove the original wood pattern. We have this negative shape inside here now that we can pull a positive wax of.
And that's what these guys were doing.
And that's what they're doing in here, is they're layering in wax layers into the mold so that it establishes a casting thickness. So we know how thick we want this to be for the metal that we're casting in. Different metals, different thicknesses. So knowing stainless, we knew what we had to pull it to. Knowing structurally where we needed to have areas that were thicker, more secure, things that were going to be bolted on later. We can make provisions for all that at this point in the wax. And then based off of the wax, we chase any seam lines, make sure the forms are all there. One piece fits to the next piece, fits to the next piece. And then we're able to then cut up the wax and what we call sprueing. That's where you add the gating system, the channels for the metal to flow into the piece, and venting for the gases to be able to get out as the metal is flowing in. So that's kind of the proprietary information every foundry has. You know, how they sprue something really dictates quality of the casting, how big they can do, thicknesses that they're doing it at, what kind of surfaces you're going to get based off of what you're doing. So it's a lot of the tricks of the trade essentially at that point.
Come on, Sally, come on. But we'll walk over, we can come back here. You know, when I'm working, I don't think of y'all very often.
That's quite all right.
You know, about what might be. See, right now, all these pieces are boxed up, ready to go to the museum. See this one? This will be part of the exhibit. They want to show the wooden, because there's a bronze of this very same thing. They want to show the process. So all of these pieces are destined to go to, now I took, in here are still some more left to, see, we had them all on these different, they were choosing which pedestals were going to be. And see, this was just a preliminary, this was the early, this was the idea. This was just the sketch, a three-dimensional sketch I work on. It took maybe 2 days to make this. And this was the final product. See? This was just the idea. This came from the, and there's a sterling one of these is going to be in the exhibit also. They wanted to show the process of how a wing, how a feather goes together. See, all these are loose. See, you know. I can put it, I have to put it back together. But see, what I'm showing you, see, I will make an exhibit space. You see that Society of the Four Arts? I will make the exhibit space and work with the curator, and I will make models to know where they're going to place them in the exhibit. The whole idea is I don't like surprise, I like to think things through. I love spontaneity. I like to put enough things in place that you can be spontaneous, but you have a lot of move. You got casters under you, you know. You can move things around. You have options. If you don't think about anything, you don't have any options. And see, this one's going. And see all this, they wanted these. Let me show you here. These are, a lot of times, these are models of things. See, these are all models of this one. This one's going to be exhibited there. This was a model of the Carolina parakeets. It comes out of this. This is just a frame, just to hold, to protect the model. But these birds are going to be the full-scale model, which these belong to the Audubon Society, but they're building a museum right now, and they don't need them. I have them stored in a vault. These will be put up at the museum, but they want to exhibit this next to that. Here's a gallinule piece, see? And one of those is on the wall up. So anyway, every bird I've ever carved, every piece of wood I've ever put my knife on, they're ragged edges. You got to keep working it, sanding it, blowing it off with you know. It's just, process is ragged. Yet, it's in the process that the truth is revealed. And so most people just think, look at finished product and, oh, isn't that cute? That just happened? You know, wow, It's a wrestling match. You know what I'm talking about. When you start editing, people won't understand at all what it takes. They just think you went in and took 30 minutes of film and that was it with the same camera. Isn't that sweet? And the more you shoot, the tougher it becomes. And you know, the bigger the piece of wood or the bigger the project, the more decisions you have to make.
Well, this is the heavy side. We're getting that all put together, and I asked Ben Blaney, the manager down there, I said, what do you think? He said, I ain't never seen anything like
We didn't know.
Yeah, you taught them how to do it, that's for sure.
So we didn't know what kind of truck. We didn't know where you needed to tarp that from the outside. You know, that's why they did. They thought you might be just tarping it.
They told us,
So that's why they built that.
early on in the project, they told us if we were over 92 inches wide, it would not go in a curtain truck.
Okay.
That's 96, and it did go.
Right.
Anything about it now, can't you? They got a hole plug cut right in here, so if there's any condensation in the inside of here, it's going to drip out right
Leak
now.
out.
But anyway, he's going to explain all that, and if we have a record of that, then if it ever needs to come apart, they'll know that punch there, they can cut around there and lift that thing off.
I got you. Yeah.
Well, hopefully it never has to.
That's right.
And you see, I added, when I got up there, I added all this later.
Oh, to get some strength?
Yes, man, if we could shake this thing, I did.
I bet that probably added a tremendous amount of.
Well, see, it kept it, what we didn't want to do, and it visually, you really not overall you have to see it, but this was just insurance. And there's some other pieces, some other things we did all around it, just to, we got up and shook that thing. It moves now.
Yeah.
But the fella at the foundry said, it's going to move, but it's not going to fall.
Yeah.
It'll be fine. So good?
originally goes back to course recovery stroke, where we first worked with Grainger and Paul and Rob Beatty. And since then we've done a few more of those, and then Grainger approached us with this concept over a year ago now, almost 2 years ago now actually. And he brought us the original wood model. We sat down in a meeting and talked about how we were going to do the piece, what we would do at materials, timelines, all that kind of stuff. Troubleshoot problems that we thought we were going to have through the build, or what might need to change as he was developing his design. And he was still working on the layout of all this at the time too. So it was all coming together for him, for how he wanted to see it all happen. And then he hired us to produce the piece. Handling art is different than handling construction materials. It acts differently, it's produced differently. We may have incorporated lift points that nobody else knows about at the time, or we've just literally handled the piece enough times in the shop, rigging it and unrigging it, that we know where to do it at. So it kind of avoids a lot of mishaps with people that don't quite understand how the movement of the piece is going to happen, or where the weight is, which in this kind of cases was a really important one, because it was not a standard lift. It wasn't just a pick it up wherever you wanted to and it was always going to hang straight. It had to be just right to slide down over the post for the feather, and then the saddle fit of the upper swans to the feather is a compound angle hit. So if you were off, it's just not going to go on. And it was bolted together, and then those bolts were hard welded over top of, and then it was also hard welded around the entire saddle fit at the top. So it's a permanent connection at this point from ground in. We spent a lot of time with the maquette, just the little wood version, playing with string, figuring out where it might lift right, how we wanted it to sit. The crates that they made, we had to make sure they could fit in the crate and fit on the truck to get down here. So we had to angle everything just right, just so it would fit to fit in the road regulations to go down the road without costing extra for permits and things. And then turn around and be able to re-rig it in that weird position to lift it up and to drop it into position here on everything. So it was tricky, but you know, like I said, we've been able to move it around enough that we kind of had a better sense of how to grab the thing. Rob and Grainger it's quite a team. They really are very strong. They know each other forever, since they've been in diapers, and they know what each other's thinking. They know the strengths of one another, and having them come on and being able to do the first few projects we did with them, we had a very good working relationship right off the bat, where just our ideals kind of synced with what we wanted to see out of the piece and what they were hoping to get out of it. And they're hard workers. I mean, they made sure that they got the job done, and you know, they worked with Grainger and made sure that, you know, he was happy with the vision of things and how it was coming together, or if he was getting worked up about something, you know, talking him back off the edge so he, you know, would be able to adjust and think of what he wanted to do with it instead. And they're just they're a very integral part of the whole project with everything. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoy this part of it because it's released into the wild. You get the full reaction from everybody. You know, everybody that loves it, hates it, everybody has an opinion, and you start hearing it immediately. Nobody really holds back anymore when it comes to that stuff. And when you're up there and you're in a basket up, you know, 20 feet in the air working on something, you hear people honking and waving and getting pictures, it helps, you know, it makes it, you know, justified for that. It means something to people, not just a thing that's out there. It has more to it, more pride.
Well, when Grainger came up with the idea, he contacted us about could through Ben McKeever, could we help him with the water part of it. And we worked on another project with him that I think Grainger was pleased with what we had done. So he came back, and the water's a much bigger part of the display than the last one we did with it. Working with Grainger McKoy, there will be no surprises. We're going to work all the details out before we put it on paper and decide what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. And that was a real challenge on the first one. He taught us a bunch about ourselves and about that expectation of excellence. And we appreciated it then, and we look forward to this opportunity to try again. This time the water show becomes, as you'll see when we start cranking it up, a bigger challenge. Before it was just some ripples and reflection. This one, he actually wanted, the challenge was for the sculpture to look like it was being held up with water. We finally have the nozzles and all in place and have electricity, so we can test that, start getting that adjustment that we know is going to be very time consuming, but if we can get it pretty close today, they're going to set the real sculpture next week, and we'll go through that process again, making sure it looks like Grainger wants it there. I think when you cut it back on, I want you to go up a little bit on the inner nozzle. I don't know, that looks pretty good. We started design work about 1.5 years ago, and then I think we started October of this year actually doing the construction, and we didn't know whether we would do the construction portion of it, but they wanted us to handle all of it, so we did do all of that. This is an engineered in-ground equipment pit, gives us a place to house all that equipment to make that happen out there. So all you're going to see is the water gushing up out there without knowing this is back here and what's making it happen. We have a feature pump that drives the nozzles. We have a filter system that's taking the water out, filtering it, putting it back in the pool, try to keep that water quality up so when you walk around it, it's not green and algaed up. That's a big control panel there that distributes that electricity, cuts the feature on and off daily, cuts the lights on and off daily, monitors, adds water when it needs to. If the water goes away for any reason, it'll shut it down to protect itself. Has automatic backwash on it. We try to do everything we could, ozone generation, that type stuff, to keep the water quality as high as we can. The budget did allow for that on this project. Most projects don't have it, so that was a plus. We've been in it long enough that we have construction money and maintenance money, and usually it's from the same pocket, and the maintenance people say, well, we'd love to have put a little more money in it up front to make this easier to do.
Go anywhere, you can just throw these away.
Yeah, this is the earliest one. This was done in 1972. This is the earliest one in their collection here. And I'd been sculpting about 18 months. What's significant about this piece is this is one of the earliest ones I put individual feathers in, carved from wood. This is all out of basswood, and the feet are metal. The feet are made of brass on these. Later on I used bronze, but we were living down in Beaufort at the time when I sculpted this, and It was a really exciting time in my life. I was scared to death, and I was probably at this point 23, 24 years old, and married and with a child, and scared. So I made a lot of sawdust in this period of my life. This bird right here is in its recovery stroke. This bird is in its power stroke up here. Just using those different wing positions to create a design. If I, 50 years later, were to do it again, I would, it wouldn't be so symmetrical. The feathers would be more in disarray. So that, basically that would be, and they would probably be a little more accurate, but accuracy doesn't necessarily define art.
You see this slot right there?
You see that, Alexa?
Where my thumb is? Huh? Okay.
It's that one flowering trees. I've stood there, I've been there, and it looks just like that. He captures it. It looks like it. Because our sister was there. Oh, wow. It's it's the very inside of a fjord.
Horizontal.
We have been very intentional about collecting artists who worked in South Carolina. So we've collected David Drake, William Henry Johnson, Jasper Johns, and Grainger fits into that narrative. That he's a living artist who's creating very important, interesting work, and we feel like it's very important to represent him in South Carolina. Most of the work we have is earlier work. So it's mainly like in the 1970s. I think we maybe have one from the 1980s. So, I mean, ideally it'd be lovely and wonderful if we could add more contemporary, more of his current work. He started out carving decoys, but he's definitely moved away from being a decoy carver to being like a true artist. He's creative in what he makes. The earlier work, he was essentially creating conversations and stories about birds and their habitat, and then he worked on simplifying the bird. And so he's kind of focused in on this very simplified bird, but it still tells a story. It still has a conversation. The sense that even though they're obviously three-dimensional static sculptures, there's always this incredible movement in them. You always get the feeling that the bird is about to do something or is in the middle of doing something. So there's like an incredible movement, and that makes it very dynamic and very beautiful. He likes a challenge. I mean, that's part of what drives him, and that's part of what makes life interesting for him, is he likes a creative outlet and he doesn't want to stick with the status quo. It's interesting for him to keep on challenging himself and evolving.
As we gather together in the presence of God and these witnesses to reopen Swan Lake Iris Gardens and dedicate Seven Swans to the glory of God, may it be done according to your goodness and grace. We give you thanks for the beautiful swan sculpture by the renowned artist Grainger McKoy. We give you thanks for the private grant funding. Thank you for the leadership of the mayor and members of council, and the many others who have made this dream a reality. Continue to bless our wonderful city and keep us all in your care. In your name we pray. Amen.
I don't think Grainger McKoy needs an introduction here, so I'm just going to say he's from Sumter, and he's the best in the world at what he does. Grainger McKoy.
One of my earliest memories was holding a heel of bread in one hand and my mother's hand in the other, and walking down to Swan Lake to feed the swans. "50 years ago, I reached in my pocket and 50 years ago this spring, I started carving my profession, which were birds. And I think that experience of walking down here with my mother triggered some of this. Because I was told early on that, Grainger, choose one thing to do and do it well. I didn't choose fur. I chose feathers. And I think it was partly because of my many trips to Swan Lake. When God was creating the world, on the 5th day, does anybody know what happened on the 5th day? God stirred the water. God stirred the water, and birds formed from the water. You see that? Hope that wasn't too corny. But water's important. You know how we are attracted to water? We're stirred by water. When you're in the mountains, you go to a waterfall, at a stream. When you're on the coast, you want to go to the shoreline and the waves. So water has always been important to all of us. You know, that's been 70 years that has gone by since I was walking through these gates with a piece of bread. And it's kind of come full circle. And I am so grateful and thankful for the opportunity that Sumter entrusted me with that special spot right there. And what an honor. Amen.
It's very unique. Sumter, for me, and the sculpture and the work of my hands is very unique, just because of the Williams Bryce Foundation and the city of Sumter are so receptive to engaging with me for outside sculpture, just because of the resources that are available from private foundation to allow this to happen is just very rare. Most municipalities, money has to be raised and committees have to be formed and decisions have to be made that is tough. But in Sumter, it's very unique. It's just a perfect storm for me in a good way.